Church, we've been pressing into the book of Philippians, so I just encourage you, if you've got a pew Bible, it's always good to have the real thing. Make sure that it don't get distracted from messages that might come in on your phone. And so grab a Bible. We're coming into land, and we don't want to sort of get distracted or think we've done it as we look at Philippians, and we're going to start at chapter 3 and verse 20 as we look at those verses tonight. And we're going to look at how we can keep an overview, the big picture of God in our lives, and how we don't become anxious, and how we press into it and can rejoice in all circumstances. So, chapter 3, verse 20. But our citizenship is in heaven. We spoke about that last week. And it is from there we are expecting a Saviour. And so Jesus is risen, he's gone, he's lived his life, he's gone to the cross, he's risen from the empty tomb. As Christians, if that's what is at the centre of our faith, if we don't believe that, then we don't need to really believe much of the Bible. But that's the core sort of stuff that we believe, that he rose from the dead. And then he ascended into heaven and sits at the right hand of the Father. And we're promised in that he will come again. And so that's what Paul's talking about in that. That we're expecting a Saviour. And it's quite clear who Paul and who we think as Christians is our Saviour, the Lord Jesus Christ. They have the Lord God. When you read the Old Testament, Satan leaves out the Lord part of God when he talks about God. But actually, when God's got his name, he's got Elohim Yahweh. And that Yahweh, Lord, is attached to Jesus, who is the Son of God. Jesus, the one that saves, that's what his name means. And Christ, the anointed Messiah. And so, Lord Jesus Christ, we've got so familiar with some of those phrases that we forget the power of those words that we're saying. Lord, he is King of Kings. He is the centre of our lives. He is the one who saves. He is the anointed. He is the one that should be the adoration of our worship. And so worship songs shouldn't be great riffs. They should be pointing us directly to Jesus all the time. He will transform the body of our humiliation that may be conformed to the body of his glory. We'll come to that later. As I get older in life, as my sporting prowess diminishes, that gives me hope. Because there's quite a bit of humiliation now and not a lot of glory. By the power that also enables him to make all things subject to himself. That power that rose him from the dead, the Holy Spirit is inside you and me, and it's have access to that today. As Christians, if you've made a declaration, and you may not have done, we have the Holy Spirit living inside of us, and we've got a choice, either to have it just turned up a little bit, or to turn it up where we live life to the full. Chapter 4, therefore, my brothers and sisters, whom I love and long for, my joy and crown, stand firm in the Lord in this way, my beloved. My beloved. One of the most remarkable moments of human history occurred on the 20th of July, 1969. Humanity landed on the moon. Not many people of you alive. Even I wasn't alive for that. Just. Neil Armstrong spoke those immortal lines, one small step for man and one giant leap for mankind. It was a monumental moment in the exploration of outer space. And can I say, it has implications for our inner space, in our hearts, when we think about what happened on that day. There's two photographs that will come up on the screen. I won't see them, but hopefully they're up there. The first is a picture taken by Bill Anderson, and it's a thing of beauty. We become so familiar with it. It's the first picture of Earth from an astronaut. You know, we had a chance just a few, maybe a year ago, of having a huge globe in this place. They were going to hang it from the ceiling and you could lie under it. Unfortunately, our ceiling wasn't quite high enough. And no matter how, we didn't quite have the millions that we could have invested in raising the ceiling, but Lizzie's brother is a vicar at Bath Abbey, and they brought it in, and we were able to go and see it in Bath Abbey because they had a much bigger ceiling. But there was something beautiful when you see the earth. And this is the first picture sent back. The second picture is the first lunar horizon, that lunar horizon, and seeing Earth in the distance. It is like an out-of-body experience that the astronauts that took this on Christmas Eve 1969. It's our first glimpse of the planet we live on. It's extraordinary. It's that picture of the bigger picture. And I'm going to talk about the bigger picture. I used to have a boss when I used to be in the police, which is I used to do. And our boss was our detective chief inspector. It was when we were on the London crime squad. And he would, if we wanted to do anything a little bit risky or do something and he didn't quite agree, he would always say to us every single time, he said, "You can't do that because you don't know the bigger picture." And it was a management technique I learned in the end, because actually there was no bigger picture. He just didn't like saying no to us, and he just used it as an excuse just to make sure that we didn't do something he didn't want us to do. And so when he left, because I'm quite like I am, we created a picture that was from here to here, and it was massive, and it was the whole of London on kind of those partitions. And we said to the boss, as he left us, I said, "Is that the bigger picture?" He didn't find it funny, but we did. But there we go. But quite often we lose perspective in life. In his book, Think Again, Adam Grant talks about the overview effect, where astronauts leave the Earth's atmosphere and view planet Earth. They have that out-of-body experience. A team of psychologists have interviewed everyone who's gone into space, both astronauts and cosmonauts, so everyone there, and they've interviewed them about their different perspective as they've come back. What they found is that astronauts and cosmonauts, nearly all, without exceptions, when they came back, they weren't interested in the triviality of life. They weren't interested in the things that got them down before. What they became absolutely aware of is their connectedness to humanity and other people. One astronaut, Jeff Asbury, said it like this: "Circling the planet in 90 minutes, you see the connection between someone at one side of the planet to the other side. Suddenly you realize you're part of a huge family, and this thing that we live on is just beautiful. It connects you. You know, we have difficulty connecting with each other. We have difficulty connecting to the person sitting in our pews next to each other, let alone someone across the world. We have difficulty connecting the fact that right now there's probably people dying in Ukraine. We have difficulty thinking about the deaths, really, and we can see it and we can weep, but we don't really feel it about Israel and Palestine. There can be a disaster in, say, like China, and tens of thousands of people will die, and it leaves us kind of all right after just a fleeting headline. But the astronauts look back and they go in awe and wonder at our connectivity, about the power of humanity. They were funny enough when they look down and we see, can we have the picture up again? Sorry. Of the first one, Mike, thank you. There is a lot of cloud there, bad day for weather. But as the pictures came down from Earth, there are no borders. There are no dividing between countries. You don't see it from outer space because they don't exist. That's a construct of humanity from the Tower of Babel when everything was divided. That's not how God created us. The overview of effects, the bigger picture, we realize we share a common ground, a common identity with every person on the planet, and it puts things into perspective. The beauty of the Creator God is He is spinning the planet right now. On its axis, on a 1,000-mile route, we will make a full rotation in the next 24 hours, and we are speeding through space at a speed of 66,000 miles an hour. And on any given day where you feel like you didn't get much done, come on, give yourself a clap, pat on the back. You have travelled millions of miles without even knowing it. That's the Creator God. Even if you have a lazy day, you have travelled a long way. He's created it at the right angle to give us life. There is so much to be thankful for. When was the last time you got on your knees and thanked God for keeping us in orbit, spinning at the correct angle to bring life to the full on planet Earth? We expect God to do it every day. We don't ask those big questions of him, and we don't thank him. We need to be thankful. You know, in the past, I shared this morning, in the past few days, just yesterday, it feels like a lifetime ago, but yesterday morning, Liz's dad passed from this life to be in glory. And so we have just centered ourselves on thankfulness. And we are so thankful for his life. And so I've been thankful for the prayers that he prayed me into the kingdom. I didn't know Jesus Christ. And when I turned up as a snotty-nosed policeman in 1996 into his house, he must have been devastated as a missionary man of God at this non-Christian standing before him. But he never rejected me, and he always prayed for me. And at our lowest points in our marriage, as you know, we separated, and I found faith, Liz found faith again, and we restored our marriage. His prayers with Liz's mum, who died only 3 months ago, were the prayers that brought us to faith. And so I got on my knees and was thankful in a perspective that now Jimmy has been joined Diane up in heaven, and they are rejoicing together. As I said this morning, she obviously wanted a 3-month break because she didn't go for 3 months, 3 months to the day. But they are there singing and praising God together. Sometimes when we deal with life, we get our perspective and we get down to the things that upset us. That's what someone's done to us, what words, what way we haven't been able to exert our power into a room, or no one's really understood us, or even more trivial, we haven't got anything in the fridge and someone's eaten all the cheese. The fortunate thing in my house, it's nearly always me. But we get so trapped in the trivial that we lose the perspective, the overview effect of how glorious God is. And so it's hard though. I'm not saying it's easy to get that perspective, because I started with my thankfulness for Jimmy and Diane. I thank the Lord for Liz, because without Jimmy and Diane, Liz wouldn't have been born. Well, I shared last week that amazing passage, that little note, and I'll put it up next week, or the week after when I preach next, is what he wrote in his Bible when Liz was born. On the day that Liz was born, he wrote a prayer that we'd never seen before until 3 weeks ago when we were in America. And I said to Liz, I've got your dad's Bible. And she opened up and went, oh my goodness, that's a prayer about me, because it was dated on her birthday. And so they're the things that you lift to. I'm thankful for my 3 girls because they've come from Jimmy and Diane's prayers. You are the result of someone's prayers. I've said it lots of times. You sit here tonight, not by coincidence, because someone's been praying for you. That's the overall effect. Because we quite often make the centre of the world ourselves. And when we look and lift our vision to creation, so keep that up, Mike, if you can, keep it. When we look at creation, that gives us a perspective that God's got the big things and he's got the small things. He's got it all in hand, the spinning of the planet, and he's got us. And we bring this in gratitude to him. Philippians, in this series of joy that we're talking about, we've had to make a decision in the last days to be joyful about Jimmy's life. It's not the easiest, it's not the most obvious. You know, the last year or 2 years been very painful for Liz in the fact that her dad's had dementia in his 90s. He's lost the ability to speak for nearly 18 months. He's lost in the last 3 months the ability to move. But we've chosen joy and told some stories about him that he's both the most wonderful man, but the most annoying man, because he won't let you off. So he used to go around there and I'd walk in from work, having been at work for 18 hours, and with about 30 seconds, because we used to live opposite them, he's knocking on the door and going, can I just come and pray with you? Because I think I need to pray with you. And when you just come in from work, you think, even now as a vicar, I think, give us 10 minutes. Give us 10 minutes. But he's just been praying for me all day and there was something bubbling in him and he wanted to see me. We then got to a point when he waited 10 minutes and then came round. But I love this overview effect that we get in Philippians. He will transform the body of our humiliation that will maybe conform to the body of his glorious body. So he's the transformer of lowly bodies. And I think, as I said this morning, wow, there might be a time in my life when I finally get a six-pack. Because I've got a bit of a keg and I've always been a party keg kind of guy. But there is a thing that is promised in the overview effect that I'm claiming today, and that is a six-pack. There's no training, just faith. That is the kind of six-pack I want. There doesn't seem to be no pain, no gain. There just seems to be a transformation of our bodies. We don't have to worry about our BMI, no pain, no root canals, no bad hair days. And we'll have glorified bodies. And I would say this morning, I would say hallelujah, which I have. In Lent, I've broken a rule. If you want to ask me about that afterwards, I'll tell you. But that is just such a promise. Theologians would say that these bodies will be incapable of suffering. So I truly believe that Jimmy is now incapable of suffering, that he has done for so long. It's filled with the Spirit. He is fully alive. He's got agility, and that's what our bodies will have. And as I get older, boy, do I need some agility and flexibility in life. And it's incorruptible. Our glorified bodies will be incapable of suffering, immune to sickness, capable of extra-dimensional times of travel, and in perfect form. And I'm pretty excited, especially I carry bad shoulders. I've dislocated this one 14 times. There are 2 operations on it, and I'm quite looking forward to the night that I go to sleep and I don't ache in my shoulder. And therefore we get that overview effect. And that's what we should step in. A lot of you are younger and going, I have no idea. Your time will come. Your time will come. But that's the overview effect. We don't often do it in our Christian journey. We stay stuck in our problems. But actually, God calls us to step back into worship and into, as we gather, and have that perspective about how glorious God is and where we're going, where our final destination is. We read last week how Paul weeps over those making the wrong choices. This is where he glorifies over those making the right choices. And there's a choice to be made, and we really don't like that in today's society. We want everything to be okay for everyone. That's not what we read in this book. I'm excited that when we get to heaven, when we encounter the kingdom, both as well, because it will break through here, that there'll be tastes on our tongue that we've never experienced in life. There'll be colours that dewlocks haven't named yet that we'll experience. And there'll be chords that angels and people will sing in worship that will send goosebumps down our backs. And there might be, as I said this morning, I might be able to sing those, because if you've heard me sing, I could clear this church. But there'll be something beautiful and mysterious and worshipful, and it's a future wealth. Paul is giving us in this passage God's eye view of us. Paul is giving us the bigger picture. He's shifting our focus from the temporal to the eternal, shifting our focus from earthly to heavenly perspective. Blaise Pascal, the 18th century mathematician, who had that encounter with God that changed his life, that was all flame. He says our imagination so magnifies the presence because he's continually thinking about eternity, thinking about a God that's bigger than big. When you have that perspective, the niggles in life, the small stuff that we sweat so often just disappears. My need is when that things happen is to get that perspective again, is to lift my visions again, however hard it is, to zoom out and widen my perspective. And when often I do that, I can then see the connection I have with the person next to me. The person that often I think is the problem is actually made in the image of God. And there's a longer story that's going on. We often see people as the problem. We're the solution that's been put next to each of us for each other. And so, I won't give you that example tonight. We just need some help to zoom out and put things into perspective. To say how it is. To think about God on who he is, that he's got us and he's bigger than big. The big idea is we step back, take a breath and see the big picture. Romans 8:18 says, the suffering of this present time is not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us. In us. I believe that. Don't lose faith with the bigger story. Don't lose faith that you aren't welcome and belong. We don't believe in something like happily ever after. We believe in something much, much bigger and more. We believe in joy forever and ever. The day is coming when people from every language, race, colour and nation will join together with the angels and the saints and will sing in perfect pitch, worshipping our Creator and Redeemer, singing, Holy, 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 Lord God Almighty. Verse 1 of chapter 4 says, therefore, my brothers and sisters, who I love and long for, there's so much affection in the letter. Paul says, my joy and my crown, that we should stand firm in the Lord, dear friends. You know, in the previous chapter, we've talked about several times that Paul sort of publishes his linking profile, and it's awfully impressive. But we said last week that we shouldn't look back to our mistakes and our failures or even our achievements. We should keep focused on Jesus in front of us. That we shouldn't get distracted by some of the stuff of the past, but be focused on where God is calling to us now. And the joy, the crown that he's talking about is you and me. That's what he's talking about there. What Paul is saying about his legacy is not his accomplishments. Paul's crown is his relationships with the church in Philippi. Our crowns is not about our achievements here for God or for the world. It's about our relationships with one another. It's the love we show to one another. It's Christ we show. Both that will be challenge and comfort. That'll be encouragement and exposure. But it's keeping that relationship through thick and thin. Discipleship is growing fruit on someone else's tree. It's what, Adriana, we've called you to do for the youth. It's not growing, you'll grow your fruit yourself, but the fruit that you're praying and teaching and walking alongside our youth is praying and developing fruit. And we talk fruit, that's like the good things in life, onto other young people's trees. That's the legacy that me and Liz have. It's not about what we achieve here, it's what we achieve here together. It's how you grow. You use your giftings. You see freedom in your lives. And you go and use those giftings in the world. And so for everyone here who's been a Christian, you are called to disciple. You are called to be praying and for fruit on others people's trees. There's a significant teacher called R.T. Kendall. R.T. Kendall was the leader of Westminster Chapel for many years. He's written over 50 books. One of the best books I've ever read on forgiveness is written by R.T. Kendall. It's called Total Forgiveness, based on the story of Joseph. If you are struggling with forgiveness, it will tell you how to totally forgive. And that's a radical call, and it's only been done by Jesus. He's also the man that when HDB, who is our network church, that Will and Jan spoke about in relation to our vision, where it's just down the road from HDB. When the Holy Spirit and John Wimber turned up and people were being released, he said, that's not of God. But a week later repented and said, God is moving. So R.T. Kendall is a real friend of the HDB network. I had the opportunity to have lunch with him. And I really didn't think I could add value to the whole conversation, to be honest with you, in relation to 50 books and years of preaching. But one of R.T. Kendall's stories that he told, one of the stories that he told about his life was when his mother was 6 months pregnant with him and his parents attended a church service in Indianapolis. This is in the early 20th century. His father was so impacted by the preacher that he put out his hand and put it on his wife's stomach and prayed that his son would be a preacher. Oh, that is praying for fruit on someone else's tree. Praying that his son would preach like the man who was preaching that night. Fast forward 20 years. R.T. Kendall is in college and attending a mandatory chapel every day. There he hears hundreds of messages throughout his time there. But one particular message he remembers and one particular preacher. He was so impacted by this one message, this one preacher, that he went back to his dorm, literally got on his knees and said, "Oh God, would you help me preach like that preacher?" He begged God for that. Then he was so impacted that he decided to pick up the phone and ring his dad, which he never did, and said, "I have just listened to the most impactful preacher I've ever heard. And I've just prayed that I'd want to preach like him, Dad." And his dad said, "Who was the preacher?" R.T. said, "His name's C.B. Cox." And his dad said, "Son, that is the preacher that was preaching the night that I put my hand on your mother's stomach and prayed for you to be a preacher." That sends goosebumps down your back. It sends it to me. Here's the rest of the story. C.B. Cox died before he met R.T. Kendall. Before R.T. Kendall started pastoring Westminster Chapel, one of the largest churches in London, came from the States and came and ministered over here. C.B. Cox didn't hear R.T. preach. He never heard any of his sermons. But I would suggest, in the grand scheme of things, God used C.B. Cox to grow fruit on R.T. Kendall's life. In leadership, R.T. preached his sermons. C.B. Cox was growing fruit and growing faith on someone else's tree. And that's the legacy we're called as Christians to do. We quite often think, what can I do for the kingdom of God? Where are you going to build me up and where can you use you? I think God calls us up to sometimes cheer someone else on. That's leadership. We're called to grow fruit on someone else's tree. Who is your joy and who is our crown? At the end of the day, it's not our resume, it's our relationships with one another. If we drop down to verse 4, it says, "Rejoice in the Lord always." I say again, rejoice. "Let your gentleness be evident to all. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and petition with thanksgiving. Present your requests to God. And the peace of God that transcends all understanding may guard it in your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus." Just as we close, keep that overview perspective, because that will help your anxiety and help you rejoice. Keep that in mind. Think about how you can grow fruit on someone else's tree. Because when you do, the person who benefits the most sometimes is the person who's preparing and discipling someone. Because it will grow fruit on your tree, but not because you are concentrating on you, it's because you're concentrating on someone else's journey. That gives a helper perspective. That means that we trust where God has got this and he's got us. It's where we say, where God, go where you're wanted. But 3 things that we can win the battle tonight, I just want to talk about. The battle of mind and angst, of anxiety in the world. Our word anxiety comes from the Danish word of angst into our language, which means something's not quite right. And we feel that, don't we? So often. The battle is often won and lost. If we lose, we don't put it in prayer. We're called to put it in prayer to God, to express it and confess it, not suppress it. Secondly, we need to fix our focus on Jesus at all times. And thirdly, we're called to flip the script, we said. We did a whole preaching series where we saw it from God's perspective. Quite often we can see it in a negative term, but it's actually believing in the promises in the faith of God. A couple of questions for tonight. How do you love people you don't like? How do you survive the inevitable setbacks that happen in life? How do you heal after your heart is broken? How do you stay positive in negative situations? None of these questions are easy to answer. But I would suggest that when I've put those things in my life into prayer, I mean everything. We don't just watch the news, we pray the news. We don't just do our jobs, we pray through our jobs and the people we work with. We just don't do and take a meeting. We pray for our appointments and our schedule before they happen. In my experience, when I'm doing that, and I don't do it always, in my experience, my appointments become divine appointments. A couple of other further questions for tonight. Are you complaining about people behind their back? Or are you praying for the people who get under your skin? Are you talking about people behind their backs? Or are you praying for the ones that rub you up the wrong way? We're called to pray. And when you pray for those people, and I might be one of those people for you, and I know that, it changes how you feel about those people when you do it in prayer. When we came to Crawley as part of the HDB plant, we took a lot of pot shots from some churches who made false allegations about our motives. I could have got bitter or prayed for them. I continue to pray again and again, and it's not easy. But I think I've been called again to get on my knees and pray again. To start praying blessings again, praying for God's grace and God's goodness. My experience in life is distance demonizes each other. So we need to meet up and pray as well. To invite the other into our homes over dinner. To be a place of sanctity and love. Pray is praying for people and their name. It's hard. I've seen things change in me and others. But it means that I can look with integrity into their eyes with love when I've prayed for them. I can't if I don't. It becomes a battle straight away. But if I'm praying for them, I can look with integrity and say, I love you. It's what we're called to do when we have difficulty. I know that some of you have got really difficult people in your lives and people that you know have made wrong choices and maybe even leading people down a wrong path. The number one place to start is to pray for them. Pray for them. And I've seen people do that in extraordinary circumstances in my life. I've seen people have young children murdered and yet start immediately praying for the people that have done it. And the people that have survived and thrived on the other side are those people that have just chosen to believe in faith and pray. It's not easy. Why is this important? Because where your treasure is your heart. Will be also, in other words, our feelings follow our actions. It's in prayer that God changes our heart. It's in his presence. It's in his word. It's when you're praying through the word that he'll change your heart for people. It's where me and Liz have been for 2 weeks, and he's broken our heart again. We're praying for the gift of tears and to be broken. And then this weekend, we just cried a lot by Jimmy's bed. Because he is a man of faith. He has grown fruit on our trees. And he's not done it spectacularly. He's just done it faithfully. Because he's loved people. Jimmy's life is defined by moving to Africa when he felt call of God, giving up a hugely well-paid job. He was a Cambridge graduate as a working class boy that when it didn't happen, he went into the army, into national service. Never speaks about that life. He talks about when God spoke to him at Billy Graham, came to faith, and then they decided to go to Africa with 4 children. I was like, oh wow. He doesn't talk about what he did, he speaks about what God did in that. And when they came home in their 60s and 70s, they weren't done. they prayed and walked and drove around West Sussex. Worked for FIBA Radio. FIBA Radio sends the message into the Muslim world for the last 30 years, and that's what Jimmy did for 30 years of his working life when he came back, was to evangelise. And then they drove around and found this village of Ashington and found this church with 12 people and a vicar who wanted to change. And they moved house and they supported him, not in any preaching or teaching, but in the background and praying and evangelism. Jimmy loved that village, and you saw how he loved it because we revealed, it's really funny, I spoke to Helen Barker, her dad was exactly the same when he came back from Africa. Maybe it was a Billy Graham thing. But we found the notes that he'd made meticulously about every single house in Ashington. Every single person's name, every person's perspective on God, and every prayer that he was going to do for that person. There's 4,000 homes. Jimmy just kept on praying. That church now is on fire. It's 12 people. It's about 500 plus on a Sunday. He was growing fruits that he'd never see. And he didn't care because he was being transformed by Jesus in his prayers. That is sacrificial living. We've made faith and church about the people up front and not the praying boiler room underneath. It's where our identity is set in him, not for the approval or words. When you give and invest into something, it shifts the way that you feel about it. Because now in prayer with God, I've vested interest and tears, and I start praying for people. It changes the way I feel about. It's a game changer. Here's the bottom line. Find the thing behind the thing. Find the triggers in your life. Find the things that tempt you. Find the things that tick you off. Find the things that turn those triggers and turn them into prayer points. Press into prayer with the stuff you fail at. So when you feel anxiety, feel it's God knocking at your door saying, hey, it's time to pray. I know some of you will say, oh, I've tried that and anxiety comes back. I think we're supposed to pray more. It's not that I'm saying here right now that I don't think there's other interventions to have, but prayer is one and the most powerful. It's not the only solution, but it's the thing we'll come back and again to pray. You see, we don't have to buy a ticket on Richard Branson's space machine. It doesn't have to cost us $250,000 to get the overview effect. We just got to get down on our knees and we get God's perspective. I'm just going to come in. I've got so much to say, but we've got so little time. You'll be pleased to know. The best way to fix our focus on Jesus is to start a gratitude journal or start a journal and pray and read the word. It sanctifies our time with God. I'm just making so many notes now as we sort of press into that. So keep your eyes fixed on Jesus. Pray. Finally, how do we flip the script? I love sport. Olympics. It's one of my favourite. We've been blessed, as I said last week, to grow up in a household that has a family, wider network of an Olympic rower. Liz's niece, Becky, rowed in the 8 in the Tokyo Olympics. But what they found in research was the people that got the silver medal were far unhappier than the person that got the bronze medal overall. They said, oh, why is that? He said, got silver, he came second. You see, the people that got the silver medal concentrated on the things they didn't quite get, which is the gold. The person who got the bronze medal was so pleased they didn't come fourth. And they got a medal at all. And so that's sometimes with us, isn't it? We concentrate on what we haven't got rather than what we have been got. I think smiling matters, but that's another preach in its time. And I think pressing into Scripture matters. Scripture allows us to see our story through the big story that God is writing through human history. Simply put, Scripture is our spirit cure. So what happened is you let complete editorial control over your life to the author and perfecter of our faith. He begins to write his story through you on how he writes such good stories. His story is our testimonies. His story is that you are more than conquerors. His story is that you can defeat this anxiety by pressing into him. And so tonight we're going to stand, we're going to do some ministry time. What I want you to take away is when we concentrate on ourselves as the centre of the world, it kind of fails. We need to have that overview effect. The other way is that we are called to be disciples of other people and to grow fruit on other people's trees. What fruit are you growing on other people's trees? And we're called, when in anxiety, to pray. Keep our eyes focused on Jesus and flip the script, which means enter into his story of redemption. It's open for everyone tonight. So shall we stand?